The wind pressed hard against the glass as Isabel Lane stepped out of the rain and into the warmth of Bloom and Bean Café. The bell above the door gave a soft chime, but no one looked up. She didn't expect them to. That was the whole point. The hoodie she wore was 3 sizes too big, thrifted on purpose. Her hair was tucked under a faded beanie, and her tailored coat, always a staple of her CEO wardrobe, had been replaced by an old army green jacket with frayed cuffs. Even her walk had changed. A subtle slouch replacing her usual confident stride. She could have entered as herself. After all, Bloom and Bean was her baby, her vision. Her grit poured into countertops and espresso machines and custom light fixtures. But lately, something had shifted. The flavor was still there. The scent of fresh ground beans and vanilla syrup still lingered in the air. But when she read the latest employee surveys, anonymously filled, no names attached, there was a chill she couldn't ignore. Burned out. Management doesn't listen. Feels like no one cares. And those were the polite ones. She slid into a small corner table, one near the window where ivy trailed down the exposed brick, pretending to scroll through her phone while scanning the cafe. It was early afternoon, the lull between the lunch rush and evening crowd. Just a few laptop workers and a couple reading quietly. A mother with a baby on her hip trying to find a table with enough room for her stroller. Behind the counter, a girl in an oversized crewneck sweater and faded jeans adjusted her messy bun. She looked like the kind of barista Isabel would have once hired in a heartbeat. Bright, relatable, a little chaotic in an endearing way. But there was something in her shoulders that gave her away. Not fatigue, not even the usual end-of-shift slump. Something heavier. "Hi there," she said as she approached Isabel's table. Her name tag read Riley. "Can I get you started with anything?" Her voice tried to sound chipper, but there was a subtle quiver, like someone trying too hard to hold it together. Isabel looked up and smiled. "Chamomile tea, please." Riley nodded, and as she turned to go, Isabel noticed something. Her hands. They weren't just trembling from the cold. It was something else. Adrenaline, anxiety. She made a note of it, not just in her head, but in the small leather-bound notebook she kept in her pocket for moments like this. As Riley worked behind the counter, Isabel watched her movements closely. She was fast, efficient, and careful with orders, but she rarely looked customers in the eye. She flinched when one coworker brushed past her too quickly, and when the register beeped too loud, she winced. That heaviness was no longer a maybe. It was real. Her tea arrived a few minutes later. Isabel gave a soft thank you and took the first sip. Warm, earthy, calming. But nothing about this place calmed her. She'd built Bloom and Bean on values, community, compassion, comfort. Not just in the menu, but in the way people felt walking through the door. It wasn't supposed to be just another cafe chain with corporate rules and bland slogans. And yet here she was, undercover, watching her staff move like ghosts behind a counter of curated calm. She pulled her phone from her pocket, not to check email, not to scroll the spreadsheets or P&L reports she knew were waiting, but to take a photo. Just a quick snap of the corner where Riley stood pouring steamed milk into a paper cup, her shoulders tight, her face low, because something was wrong here. And Isabel Lane didn't just want to fix the coffee. She wanted to fix the why behind that girl's eyes. But she had no idea that within the next hour, she wouldn't just uncover a broken system. She would uncover a broken story, and it would start with a phone call, one she was never meant to hear. The sound was faint, muffled by the grinder's whir and the soft hum of indie music echoing through the speakers, but Isabel's ears caught it anyway. A voice, trembling. It was Riley. She had stepped away, half hidden behind the staff hallway curtain that separated the cafe from the cramped employee locker room and storage closet. From Isabel's corner booth, she could just barely see the outline of the girl, her back to the wall, head tilted down. Isabel wasn't trying to eavesdrop, not at first, but the tone of Riley's voice shifted from quiet to cracked, like someone struggling to keep their emotions inside and losing that fight, syllable by syllable. "I know," Riley whispered hoarsely into her phone. "I know the notice was final. I thought I'd have more time." Isabel froze, her teacup hovering midair. The words hit harder than they should have. The kind of words you don't say at work unless you're desperate, or hiding how bad it's gotten. No, I haven't told anyone here. I can't. If I miss another shift, they'll cut my hours. And I can't lose this job, too. There was a long silence. Then came the sound that made Isabel's heart stop cold. A sob. Small, quickly muffled, like Riley had clapped her hand over her mouth. But it broke something in the air. A thin crack in the glossy, smiling surface of the cafe. Isabel felt her throat tighten. That wasn't the sound of someone having a bad day. That was the sound of someone losing hope. I'm trying, Mom. I am. But the bills, the rent, the hospital stuff, it's all coming at once. Another pause, a sniffle. I haven't told him yet, I can't. He'll think I'm dragging him down. A crash from the dish pit cut through the cafe noise, ceramic meeting tile, and Isabel quickly turned her attention back to her tea, pretending she hadn't heard a thing, pretending her stomach hadn't just twisted into knots. Riley emerged from behind the curtain seconds later, her eyes puffy, her nose subtly pink. She wiped her hands on her apron, tried to smile at a customer waiting by the register, but it faltered halfway. Isabel watched her shuffle behind the bar again, head down, pouring 2 iced coffees with automatic precision. Her hands still trembled, just barely, just enough. And then Isabel saw it. When Riley handed the drinks off and turned her back for just a moment, the shift lead, a tall, smug-looking guy with a man bun and a latte-colored button-up, leaned in and whispered something to another barista. They both snickered. Riley didn't see it, but Isabel did. The moment held more weight than it should have. Because this place, the one with fairy lights in the windows and chalkboard signs boasting kindness is our secret ingredient, had just revealed a lie, and that lie had Riley in its grip. Isabel slowly closed her notebook. She'd come in looking for inefficiencies. Maybe a lackluster playlist or a staff member texting on the job. Instead, she'd found a storm hiding behind the espresso machine. One barista, one call, and a truth she couldn't unhear. Whatever Riley was going through, she was carrying it alone. But not for much longer. Because the next move wasn't just business, it was personal. And Isabel Lane wasn't walking out of Bloom and Bean without changing something. For good. The morning rush had passed, and the cafe exhaled into its quiet lull, the golden hour between chaos and calm, when sunlight streamed through the front windows and the scent of fresh biscotti lingered in the air. Riley was cleaning the syrup station when Isabel approached the counter again. The barista didn't look up at first. She was too focused, wiping down each bottle label with a care that told Isabel everything. This girl didn't just work hard. She worked like it mattered, like her job was one of the only things she could control. "Excuse me?" Isabel said softly. Riley turned, flinching slightly. "Oh, sorry, I didn't see you. Can I get you anything?" Isabel hesitated, her mind full of questions she couldn't ask, at least not yet. "No, I'm good, just admiring your attention to detail." Riley gave a modest shrug, eyes flicking away. "It's kind of my thing. Makes the place look better." Isabel smiled. "It does. And I noticed you handled that spill earlier like it was nothing." Riley's brow furrowed, confused by the compliment. "It's just part of the job." But Isabel saw the truth behind her modesty. How often had she cleaned up someone else's mess, smoothed over a moment of awkwardness, or filled in for someone who ghosted their shift last minute? All invisible labor. All dismissed as just part of the job. "Your job matters more than you think," Isabel said gently, and then added, "You ever talk to your manager about taking on more responsibility?" Riley gave a small, tight laugh. "I've asked, a few times, but Leo, he says I'm not quite lead material. Too emotional, too soft." That hit a nerve. Too emotional, too soft. Isabel had heard those same words thrown at her once, years ago, when she first pitched her plan to start a cafe that would feel like home. Back when her ideas were dismissed as sentimental nonsense by venture capitalists who only cared about margins, not moments. But soft hadn't been her weakness. It had been her strength. And now here stood Riley, bearing that same quiet power, carrying a weight that no one seemed to notice or care about. Isabel glanced past her, watching Leo bark instructions at another barista, then disappear into the back office. The door swung shut behind him like a final period on a sentence no one else could finish. "Hey," Riley said, her voice dropping a notch. "Can I ask you something weird?" Isabel blinked, surprised. "Of course. Do I seem off today? Like, do I look like I've been crying?" There was no point in pretending anymore. "A little," Isabel admitted softly. Riley winced, pushing a hand through her hair. "Damn, I was hoping no one noticed." "I noticed," Isabel said, "but not in a bad way." The barista tilted her head. "You didn't look weak," Isabel said. "You looked like someone trying really hard not to fall apart." Riley didn't reply, but her lip quivered slightly before she turned away again, pretending to restock sugar packets. "I'm sorry," she muttered. "Don't be," Isabel said. "Ever." She wanted to reach across the counter and say everything about who she really was, what she'd heard, and the plan already forming in her mind. But it wasn't time yet. The mask had to stay on. For now. But this story? It wasn't going to end with a barista crying behind the syrup pumps while her coworkers whispered about her. Not on Isabel's watch. Not ever again. The next morning, Isabel arrived earlier than usual, before the front lights were flipped on, before the espresso machines hissed to life. The air was still cool with dew, and the cafe windows were fogged at the corners, like the building itself had secrets it was still holding close. She stood just outside the door, holding a to-go cup from the bodega down the block, savoring the bitter, burnt taste. Not because it was good, far from it, but because it reminded her of where she started, where she used to be, long before a dream and a second-hand espresso machine turned into this chain of quiet sanctuaries called Haven. Inside, the lock clicked. The door opened a crack, and Riley peeked out, surprised. "Oh, hey," she said, brow rising. "You're back." Isabel smiled and gestured with the cup. "Couldn't stay away, missed the real coffee." Riley let her in, flipping on the lights with a practiced flick, the cafe blooming into warm gold. The scent of yesterday's baked goods still lingered, mixing with the early morning chill. "Leo's not here yet," Riley said. "Usually he strolls in 10 minutes before open." "That doesn't surprise me," Isabel murmured, mostly to herself. Riley shrugged off her coat and got to work, quiet, efficient, and deliberate. Wiping down counters, checking the pastry case, filling the sanitizing buckets with water and blue tabs. Isabel watched from the corner, the way a sculptor studies marble. There was something so fluid in Riley's movement, like muscle memory had merged with heart. "You live nearby?" Isabel asked casually, as Riley arranged scones into neat, slightly overlapping rows. There was a pause, a fraction too long. "Sort of," Riley answered without looking up. "Sort of?" "I had to move last week. Landlord sold the building. I'm staying with a friend right now, just temporary." Isabel didn't press. The walls people build around their struggle are sacred sometimes. You don't knock them down. You leave the door cracked and wait. "You okay?" she asked softly. Riley looked up for the first time. Her face was a little too blank, like someone who'd run out of places to put her feelings. "Honestly," she said. "No, but I will be. I always am." That answer, that fight behind the broken edges, made Isabel's chest ache. She wanted to say, "You shouldn't have to be strong all the time." She wanted to scream, "Where is the manager who's supposed to notice when his best employee is hanging by a thread?" But instead, she offered her the only thing she could in this moment. "I know it's not much," Isabel said, reaching into her bag and pulling out a key fob from the HQ office. "But if you ever need a quiet space, a safe one, our Midtown Cafe has a private lounge for staff who need it. My company set it up. You just scan this." Riley stared at it like it was something made of gold, something she didn't feel worthy of holding. "Why?" she asked quietly. "You don't even know me." Isabel offered her a soft, knowing smile. "Let's just say I've been where you are, and someone once gave me a key." The barista took the fob with both hands as if it might shatter. She didn't say thank you. She didn't have to. Some moments don't need words. Some moments just are. And as the first customers began to line up outside, their shadows cutting across the glass like clock hands ticking forward, Isabel knew one thing for sure. This wasn't going to be just another cafe story. This was going to be hers and Riley's together. By the time Leo finally arrived, 10 minutes late and holding a half-eaten croissant, Riley had already prepped the pastry display, stocked the syrup bar, calibrated the espresso machine, and taken the first 5 orders of the morning. She greeted each customer with the kind of tired cheerfulness that no one notices until it's gone. Leo strolled in with the swagger of someone who believed his presence alone was contribution enough. "You're early," he said to Isabel with a crooked grin, tossing his keys onto the counter. "Just wanted to see the morning rush?" Isabel replied smoothly, her expression unreadable. He barely looked at Riley as he passed her, moving straight toward the back to unlock the office, no doubt to check inventory by watching YouTube videos for half an hour. Isabel saw Riley glance at him as he walked away, her jaw set tight. She didn't say anything. She never did. But Isabel had heard enough. By noon, the cafe had hit its usual stride. Laptops open, espresso shots pulled every 3 minutes, jazz humming low through the speakers. Isabel stayed at her corner table, laptop open in front of her, but her eyes rarely left Riley. That's when it happened. A slip of paper fluttered from Riley's apron pocket as she bent down to pick up a napkin dispenser. Isabel saw it fall. Riley didn't. She walked over slowly and scooped it up, intending to quietly hand it back. But then she saw the words. Final notice. Balance due. $1,137.42. Eviction paperwork. Folded and creased from being handled too many times. The ink smudged, a thumbprint over the word vacate. Isabel didn't hesitate. She slid the paper into her pocket before Riley could notice. Her hands shook as she returned to her seat. Not out of anger, but heartbreak. She's not even living with a friend, she realized. She's living in fear, in borrowed time, and she didn't tell anyone. Leo reemerged around 12:30, just in time for the tail end of the rush. He strolled behind the bar, straightening his name tag and giving Isabel a wink. "So, still think we're the best cafe in town?" he asked, chuckling. Isabel didn't answer right away. She looked past him, at Riley, wiping a spill off a table, sleeves rolled, sweat clinging to her collarbone, back aching, but still smiling at a toddler reaching for her tip jar. Then she looked at Leo and smiled. "No," she said calmly, "but I think we could be." Leo blinked, confused. "Sorry?" "I said this place could be the best, with the right leadership." Leo laughed, clearly thinking it was a joke. "Well, thanks, I do my best." Isabel closed her laptop and stood. "I'm sure you do," she said with a tone that stopped his grin cold. "But I've seen what real leadership looks like, and it doesn't clock in late and clock out early." Before he could respond, she walked past him and tapped Riley gently on the shoulder. "Could I borrow you for a minute?" she asked. Riley looked confused, then nodded. In the quiet of the back hallway, near the employee lockers, Isabel turned to her with the eviction notice now smoothed out in her hands. "I found this," she said gently. "I'm so sorry." Riley's eyes widened. Her face flushed crimson. I was going to pay it. I just needed another week. Please don't tell Leo. He'll cut my hours." "Riley," Isabel interrupted, voice calm and firm, "Leo's not going to cut your hours. Leo's not going to be your manager anymore." Riley blinked. "What?" Isabel smiled softly and reached into her coat pocket. This time, she didn't pull out a key. She pulled out a card. It was elegant, embossed in gold. Isabel, Row founder and CEO, Haven Cafes. "I'm not just a regular," Isabel said. "I own Haven, all of them." Riley stared, her mouth slightly open. Her hands trembled at her sides. "You've been working so hard, Riley, carrying this whole cafe on your back while trying not to break in half yourself. And no one saw it. But I did." Riley looked like she was going to cry, but she didn't. Not yet. Because right then, she was still trying to figure out if this moment was real. "I'm giving you something better than just help," Isabel continued. "I want you to be the new assistant manager of this cafe. Full-time, benefits, stable hours, and a raise that makes sure eviction notices never find their way into your pocket again." Riley covered her mouth with both hands. Her eyes shimmered. "Why would you do this?" "Because you showed up," Isabel said, "even when the world didn't, and no one should fight that hard, alone." The hallway was silent for a long moment. Then Riley let out a shaky breath and nodded. I don't know what to say." Isabel smiled. "Then don't say anything, just stay." And together, they stepped back into the cafe, into a space that, for the first time in a long while, felt like hers. By the time Riley walked back behind the counter, the rush had subsided. A few laptop warriors nursed cold coffee, and two elderly women near the window were laughing over scones. From the outside, everything looked the same. But inside Riley, something had shifted. She didn't know how to hold it all. The shock, the relief, the disbelief. And still, she worked. She poured oat milk into a to-go cup like her hands hadn't just been shaking minutes ago. She smiled at a teenage girl ordering a matcha latte, like her life hadn't just been turned upside down in the back hallway. But now it wasn't fear holding her up. It was something else entirely. Hope. When Isabel reemerged into the front of the cafe, Leo was waiting. His arms were crossed, his expression pinched with confusion and irritation. But as soon as he saw her walking straight toward him, this time with a confidence he could feel in the floorboards, his stance wavered. "Look," Leo started, "if this is about the earlier comment, I was just joking." "It's not about a comment," Isabel interrupted, her tone clipped and cool. "It's about a pattern. Of missed shifts, of ignoring staff, of letting the people who actually care about this place carry more weight than they ever should have had to." Leo blinked. "Okay, now hold on. Who even are you to—" "I'm the owner," she said, cutting him off again. She said it quietly, calmly, but it landed like a thunderclap. Leo's jaw dropped. What?" "You heard me," Isabel said. "I own Haven, all of them." She stepped closer. "And I've been here all week, watching you arrive late, watching you mock your staff, watching you ignore customers who needed help and make Riley run herself into the ground." Leo's mouth opened, then closed again. "You're being transferred," Isabel continued, her voice even, "to a lower traffic store, with oversight. Your raise is on hold until we review your management record. You can keep your job for now, but only if you're willing to actually work for it." Leo stammered, "You're punishing me because she's emotional?" Isabel's eyes flashed. "No, I'm punishing you because you're not. Because compassion isn't a weakness here. It's a requirement. And Riley? She's what this cafe should have been built around from the start." Leo didn't respond. He just stared as Isabel turned and walked away, past the counter, toward Riley, who was pouring espresso with shaky fingers and pretending she wasn't eavesdropping. "You're not invisible anymore," Isabel said quietly as she reached her. "Not in this place, not under my watch." Riley looked up, and for the first time in weeks, her smile wasn't a mask, it was real. "I don't know how to thank you." "You don't have to," Isabel replied. "You just have to show them how it's done." As Isabel stepped out into the late afternoon light, a warm breeze swept through the sidewalk, ruffling her coat. She looked back through the cafe window. Riley was still there, laughing now with a customer. The space felt brighter already. There was still work to do. But for now, a shift had begun. The next morning, the cafe felt different before the sun even rose. Riley arrived just after 5 a.m., keys in hand, hair pulled into a messy bun, expecting another day of quietly surviving. But as soon as she stepped through the door, something tugged at her senses. The lights were already on. The espresso machine had been cleaned. The counter, usually scattered with crumbs from the late shift, was spotless. And there, kneeling by the pastry display with a clipboard in hand, was Isabel. Not in her disguise, not behind sunglasses or a baseball cap. Just Isabel Quinn, CEO of Haven Coffee, scrubbing the floor in yoga pants and sneakers like it was the most natural thing in the world. Riley froze. You're really here." Isabel looked up, smiling. "I said I would be." "You're working here?" Riley asked, setting her bag down slowly. "Not just checking in?" "Working," Isabel nodded, standing and wiping her hands on a towel. "For the next week, I'm yours." Riley laughed under her breath. "You're going to hate it." "I hope not," Isabel replied, but her smile faltered just slightly. "Because I think I've already hated the way I've run things until now." They started slow. Isabel let Riley take the lead, quietly asking where the labels were, how to refill the grinder, when to start the scone batch. She didn't interrupt or offer improvements. She listened. By the time the first wave of regulars came through, Jason with his protein shake, Anya with her double shot and toddler in tow, the cafe felt like a different universe. Because Isabel wasn't just observing anymore. She was present. She remembered names. She made foam hearts in lattes. When a woman came in visibly shaken from a morning argument with her partner, Isabel offered a quiet seat near the window and paid for her coffee herself. Riley caught her doing it. Later, between rushes, she said, "That's what Henry used to do. Our old manager." Isabel looked surprised. "The one who passed away?" "Yeah." Riley's eyes softened. "He used to say cafes were the last safe space for some people. He'd cover meals when he could, help the high schoolers find jobs. He used to fix broken bikes for the kids in the neighborhood. On Saturdays, he'd leave notes on receipts like, 'I believe in you' or 'Today's going to be okay.'" Isabel listened, quietly taking it all in. "I never knew," she said. "I never asked." "You're asking now," Riley replied. "That's a start." By noon, the energy in the cafe had shifted entirely. The staff, initially stunned by Isabel's presence, began warming up. Even Ava, the newest barista who barely spoke above a whisper, cracked a joke about her latte art looking like a potato instead of a leaf. And Isabel, she wasn't faking it. She stayed on the floor. She cleaned the bathrooms. She fixed the broken milk fridge herself when it started humming again. Word traveled fast. Regulars whispered to each other. One woman even leaned in at the register and asked Riley, "Is that her? The real boss?" Riley just smiled and said, "Yep, and she knows how to clean a blender too." That night, as they locked up together, Isabel turned to Riley under the flickering porch light. "You know," she said, "when I started this place, I dreamed of a cafe where people felt seen, somewhere they could exhale, somewhere safe." Riley nodded. "It's becoming that again." Isabel looked at her. "Because of you?" "No," Riley whispered, and for the first time she truly believed it. "Because of us." And for the first time in a long time, the lock clicked shut on a cafe that felt like home. Friday morning came with a soft drizzle, the kind that blurred car windows and quieted the streets. Inside Haven Coffee, it was warm, almost reverent. Something had changed in the marrow of the place. The music was a little softer, the greetings a little warmer, and the regulars lingered just a few extra moments longer at their tables. Isabel had been working side by side with the team for 5 straight days. By now, she knew how to unjam the toast slicer, how Riley liked her espresso pulled short, and which creamer Ava preferred for her morning cup. Her hands bore a light dusting of flour, and her shoes, once pristine, now bore the stains of syrup spills and mopped-up messes. But it wasn't just the physical work that left its mark. It was the stories. Ava, who'd been afraid to speak up, confessed her dream of opening a mobile cafe one day. Marcus, the shift lead, opened up about his older brother in rehab and how the closing shift kept his mind off the worry. Even customers started opening up, little by little, like the cafe itself had started to breathe again. And at the center of it all was Riley. Isabel watched her in quiet admiration that morning. There was a lightness in Riley now, A lift in her shoulders, a steadiness in her step. For so long, she'd been carrying more than just coffee trays and receipts. She'd been holding the heart of this place together. Around 10 a.m., a man came in, late 30s, unshaven, hunched beneath a wet hoodie. He didn't meet anyone's eyes, just shuffled toward the counter and mumbled, "Just a coffee." Isabel stepped up. "It's on me." He looked up, surprised. "Really?" She smiled. "Yeah, we all need a win sometimes." He blinked, nodded slowly, and murmured, "Thanks." As he turned away, Isabel scribbled something on his receipt before sliding it across the counter. Riley caught the note. It read, "You matter more than your worst day." Riley stared at the words for a moment too long. Her throat tightened. That's what Henry used to write. Isabel smiled faintly. "I've been reading the receipts in the tip jar, the ones people saved." There was silence between them for a beat. Then Riley reached into her apron pocket and pulled out a worn, folded piece of paper. She handed it to Isabel without a word. It was a receipt, dated 2 years ago. On it, scrawled in gentle cursive, were 4 words. "You've got this, kid." "I was going to quit that day," Riley said. "I had nowhere to go. No one who believed in me." She met Isabel's eyes. "Then I found that, and suddenly I didn't feel invisible anymore." Isabel held the receipt delicately, like it might crumble in her hands. "We're bringing it back," she said quietly. "The notes, the heart, everything we forgot along the way." Later that day, Isabel gathered the staff after the lunch rush. They stood in a semicircle around the pastry case, wiping hands on aprons, curious but calm. "I owe you more than apologies," Isabel began, her voice steady. "I owe you transparency. I built this place to feel like home, and somewhere along the way I left the front door unlocked and just walked out." She looked around the room, at Ava, Marcus, Riley, even the newest dishwasher who'd only been there a week. "You kept it alive. You kept each other going. Now I want to keep you going." She pulled a folder from behind the counter. Inside were updated benefit packages, pay increases, and a formal notice of a new emergency support fund, the Henry Fund, named for the late manager who'd once left a note that saved a life. Every barista, every cook, every team member seen, heard, backed. Riley's eyes filled with quiet tears. "You don't have to do all this," she said, barely above a whisper. Isabel gave her a soft smile. "No," she said, "but I get to." Outside, the rain eased into sunlight. A faint glow slipped through the windows, casting golden light across the cafe floor. And for the first time in a long time, the team didn't just serve coffee. They served hope. Word traveled fast in the neighborhood, but this spread like something sacred. It started with a simple sign taped to the front door of Haven Coffee the following Monday. "Ask us about the Henry Fund. You're never as alone as you think you are." Customers paused at the door to read it. Some smiled and walked in like usual. Others blinked back tears they didn't fully understand. But everyone noticed. Inside, things were different now. The staff wore the same aprons, brewed the same beans, served the same pastries, but there was a new warmth in the air, like the place had exhaled after holding its breath too long. Isabel watched from the corner table that used to be her father's favorite. She'd been spending more time here lately, not as a CEO with a clipboard, but as someone rediscovering her own place in the story. The Henry Fund was her first real act of restoration. It wasn't flashy. There were no billboards, no press releases, just quiet dignity. If a customer was short on rent and needed groceries, the fund could cover it. If a staff member's tire blew out on the highway or their mom got sick out of town, they weren't left scrambling. It was a safety net, but more than that, it was a message. "We see you. We've got you." The first time it was used publicly was on a Wednesday morning. A middle-aged man named Jeremy came in, dragging a tired stroller behind him. His daughter, maybe 4 or 5, clung to a stuffed giraffe, like it was the only thing holding her world together. He ordered a coffee. Nothing more. Riley, working the register, glanced down, then quietly added a blueberry muffin to the order. She didn't announce it, just slid it across the counter and said, "She looks like she could use this." Jeremy hesitated, eyes reddening. I I can't pay for... It's on us, Riley said, gently tapping the laminated flyer taped beside the espresso machine. The Henry Fund. He tried to speak, but the words caught. Instead, he nodded, mouthed, "Thank you," and took the muffin like it was something holy. At the back of the cafe, Isabel closed her laptop and wiped her eyes. It was working. Later that day, the staff gathered in the stockroom for a quick meeting. Isabel stood in front of the whiteboard, marker in hand, but it wasn't business as usual. She wrote 2 words in big capital letters. "Trust first." "That's our new policy," she said. "Before rules, before reports, we trust people. We help first." There was a beat of silence before Ava raised her hand. "Even if it means getting burned sometimes?" Isabel nodded. "Especially then." Because she knew now, the worst moments people carry are the ones they never talk about. And Haven Coffee wasn't just a place to work, it was a place to land. Outside, dusk fell over the street in shades of amber and rose. The city moved on like always. But inside, a revolution had started. Not with noise, not with profit, but with a cup of coffee and the belief that everyone deserves a soft place to land. The scent of cinnamon and espresso drifted through the cafe like memory. Warm, familiar, grounding. It was Sunday morning, the kind of quiet that held reverence. Isabel stood just inside the doorway, hands tucked in the pockets of her worn trench coat, watching Haven Coffee hum to life like it always had. But now, it meant something more. The tables were full, some with regulars, others with new faces drawn in by the whisper of something rare. Kindness that didn't ask for receipts. The Henry Fund had quietly saved 4 families from eviction, paid off 2 sets of emergency medical bills, covered a week of groceries for someone's grandma. But the real victory? No headlines. No "look at what we did." Just small ripples, changing lives. Ava moved behind the counter with a quiet joy, her hands quick and steady. She smiled easily now, but it was a real smile, the kind that came from sleep and stability and not waking up in fear of a pink slip. Isabel made her way to the counter, and Ava spotted her before she could say a word. "Your usual?" Ava asked, raising an eyebrow. "Or are we still pretending you're not the boss?" Isabel grinned. "Surprise me." Ava winked and turned to the espresso machine, but not before sliding a cinnamon scone onto a plate with a knowing smirk. "You always want the scone." They shared a look, one that said everything, no words necessary. As she waited, Isabel scanned the cafe. She saw Jeremy and his daughter again, this time laughing over hot chocolate and crayons. A college student at the corner table, laptop open, an empty mug beside a crumpled receipt that read, "Covered by the Henry Fund. You've got this." And then her eyes landed on a young man just outside the front window. Mid-20s. Hoodie, backpack, exhausted eyes. She recognized the look. "I've been trying so hard for so long, and I'm not sure anyone sees me." He hesitated by the door, looked through the glass, then looked away. Isabel stepped forward and opened it for him. "Come in," she said gently. "It's warm." He blinked, startled. "Do I have to?" "No," she said, cutting him off with a smile. "You don't have to buy anything, just come in, rest." He nodded slowly, then stepped inside. That was it. That was the whole thing. Build a place where people feel safe enough to walk in without permission. As the sun crept higher, casting golden light across the hardwood floor, Isabel sat at her favorite table and took a bite of the scone. It was warm, flaky, perfect, just like the people who made this place what it was. And in that moment, she knew. This cafe wasn't just her father's legacy anymore. It was everyone's. A place that said, "You matter." A place that said, "We see you." A place that said, "You can fall here and still be caught." Because sometimes, the most powerful kind of leadership doesn't come from boardrooms or balance sheets. It comes from listening when no one thinks you're watching. from stepping in when someone's about to break, and from remembering that behind every coffee order is a human story, one that just might need a little room to breathe. And so, what started with a cup of soup and a quiet breakdown behind the espresso machine ended with something far greater than a paycheck or a promotion. It ended with someone finally being seen. Ava no longer wakes up in fear of losing everything overnight. The eviction notice is gone. Her savings are growing. And more importantly, she believes again in her future, in her voice, in herself. The cafe? It thrives, not because of some viral campaign or flashy remodel, but because people can feel what lives here now. A culture of listening, of compassion, of knowing that sometimes the most powerful thing a leader can do is sit quietly and hear the pain no one else is asking about. Isabel didn't just save her cafe that day. She reclaimed it. For her father's legacy, for her team, and for every exhausted barista who ever wondered if kindness still had a place in the workplace. It does, and it always will, as long as people like you care enough to keep that story alive. So if this hit home, if you've ever had to hold back tears on a shift, if you've ever wished someone, anyone, would notice what you were carrying, stick around. Subscribe for more stories that don't just entertain, but matter. Because the next one might just be yours.